Well, hello and welcome to More to the Story with Molly White. I'm so glad you joined me again today for another great episode because there's nothing more powerful than personal stories, personal testimonies, especially of the harm of abortion on women and men. And we're going to have a special guest on today that's going to come from a man's perspective and a man's experience with abortion. But before I introduce him, I just want to welcome back my awesome, wonderful co host, Mary Browning. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you, Molly. It's very good to be back. I know I was gone for a little bit, and it's good to be back today because we will, as you said, be having an abortion story. We do want to warn our listeners that there could be something in the content today that causes you to have an emotional reaction. We call that a trigger, and we would encourage you to call um, a helpline. We have a helpline. The H3 helpline is 866-721-7881. And there might be another number also as we proceed with today's recording.
Yes,
Thank you,
Mary.
Molly.
You're welcome and thank you. So I know you've met our guest in person, and I believe I ran across him on the Support After Abortion website and reached out to him and invited him to be on our podcast because I was very intrigued by his story. His name is Nyles Pinckney, and Niles is originally from Beaufort, South Carolina, which South Carolina's a beautiful state. And he had the privilege of attending Clemson University as a student athlete, and I think it's probably well deserved. And he graduated with a degree in sociology and criminal justice before continuing his education at the University of Minnesota. Now, outside of academics and athletics, his proudest role is being a father to his son. Over the past year, he served as the men's healing coordinator of Support After Abortion, where he's had the opportunity to walk alongside men in their abortion recovery healing journeys. So his experience as an athlete, a student, a father, and an advocate has shaped his passion for serving others and making a difference in the lives of those he meets. So, Niles, welcome to More to the Story. I'm so excited to have you.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you. Well, like we were talking pre-show here, it's so important for men to have their voice heard when it comes to pregnancy loss through abortion. And many times, Mary, men's stories are overlooked or men are not
That's
given the
true.
opportunity to have a voice on this subject. And so when a man does come out and does share from his heart, it really makes an impact on people. So Niles, won't you take us back to the beginning, I guess, maybe the relationship with your girlfriend or just kind of tell us your backstory and then moving forward from there.
Of course, I can do that. So I always felt like my story was a little bit different from my abortion experience because, as you mentioned, I do have a son, and my son was actually born before my abortion experience, and this plays into how I got to my experience because me and his mother at the time we were dating. We were dating for some time, and we ended up our relationship ended, and then maybe a few months later, she came to me and told me that I'm pregnant and I'm keeping the child no matter what you say. And she said that all of in just like one big blurb in a message to me after, and we didn't talk for a while because we weren't together. So when I saw that message, the thing that stuck out to me the most was obviously she's saying she was pregnant, but she's like, I no matter what I say, she's keeping it. But I was like, I wouldn't even think to say anything like that because, as you mentioned, I'm from South Carolina, the Bible Belt, so that's not something that we're really taught, or just it's something that's not mentioned. So fast forward a few years later, and me and another young lady we started dating, and around this time, I'm getting prepared to go into the last year of football for me. And as someone know that are big football fans, after your last year of football, you go get ready for the NFL draft, professional, and that's always been a goal of mine. And as for herself, she's getting ready to go to grad school to continue her education. So we were both heading into big times in our lives, and this is the summer before these times for us would start. So things for us were going really well. We were being safe because she knew I had a son and I wanted to be safe to make sure, just to be smart and cautious this time, because I wanted to make sure that with both of the things that we have going on for ourselves, I just wanted to make sure that we stay focused, and she appreciated and agreed as well. Then as time went on and we were dating and things were going great, and we got into the season and she starts telling me I'm not feeling too well. And I was like, okay, what's wrong? Well, she's like, I'm just feeling a little bit bloated, I gained weight, and just something just feels off. And me just being just kind of listening to what she's saying and just making sure, like doing the man thing, as we say, just checking all of our options, every solution. I was like, why don't you just take a pregnancy test? So then she continues and she takes the pregnancy test, and me with the utmost confidence in myself, I was like, we'll be fine. This is just checking the box, really. Well, we're traveling in, we play our games on Saturdays, and Fridays are travel days in college for football. So Friday, we get to our team hotel. We're kind of settled in right before we kind of get ready to go to bed and get ready for the next day where we play. She calls me and shows me the pregnancy test, and me just kind of looking and just kind of like not just prepared, it's positive. And seeing in that moment, I just kind of paused, and I could see in her face that she had been in shock as well as a little bit emotional herself because we didn't expect this. We had been cautious. We thought we were. And she wanted to talk about all of her worries and things this much, but and I told her, I said, "Hey, I want to be here for you," and she knew that. And I said, after this game, I will be here for you completely, 100%, because I felt like it wasn't fair for me to have this going on, like football wise, certain things like that, as well as her prioritize her emotions because that just needed to be full attention to me. So we get back from the game and I sit down, I FaceTime her because at this time she's in grad school and I'm still in Clemson. So we're not anywhere near each other. We're about 7 to 8 hours apart.
Mm.
So there's like, it's not, we can just have a simple face to face conversation. So we talk about everything, and she expresses some of the things that's worrying her about it is she was raised by her grandfather that's a pastor. He's a big provider and helping her pay for school, her housing, food, certain things like just because paying for college is expensive. Her grandmother, who's very involved in the church as well. So right there, those are two big figures in her life that raised her, support her still to that day, that were in her life, and they weren't really the biggest fans of having kids out of wedlock. And she was just fearful. She never said that they said it, but she was fearful that they would just maybe like pull back their support. You just never know what could happen that experience
Yes.
because it's something that was so sudden. And we were dating, but we weren't dating that long. So that was another thing that would probably just make them feel a little bit more in shock as well. So that was something that she voiced to me. Another thing was she was like, how would I be able to, okay, if they do take away support, how would I still pay for school? And I was like, I don't even know what I can do myself because my future's not set in stone. Because I mean, in college, we were getting a stipend, but that's not enough to support a child as well as her grad school. And then and as we know, the NFL isn't promised. And I told her that I'm very confident in myself as an athlete and a player, but I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket because I'm also a realistic person. So these are just things we voiced, and we just wanted to do all. And I did the man thing again and said, "Hey, how about we look at all our options?" And even when I said that, another thing that neither of us mentioned abortion. In our mind, it was either adoption, hide the pregnancy and have an adoption, or figure out if there was a way for someone to help us just be able to like just for financially. So those were the two things that were mostly in our mind. Though abortion wasn't one of the things. So we ended up going to it was a pregnancy resource center, but they went by the name clinic because the plan was during my bye week, which means no games for football for me. I would travel to where she was, and we would go to this clinic, ask them questions, and just and just make sure we can go somewhere where we can just feel like it's unbiased, have all of our questions answered. So the plan was I went there, she looked up a place, it was called a clinic because it was called a clinic even though it was a pregnancy resource center because as you know, you're near a bunch of colleges. So what is the first word most college kids are gonna look up for asking questions about sexual or reproductive is a clinic. So that was one thing I didn't think of it until I got into this field where I am now. But to us, that's where we went. And when we went there, there was a woman that greeted us. She was very kind and welcomed us in and just made us feel very like just welcomed us with compassion at first. But then as we sat there and we tried to ask questions, one of the first things, as I mentioned, we never mentioned anything about abortion, but she was like, "You just can't have an abortion." And we were just kind of like, whoa, it kind of shocked us a
Mhm.
little bit because that wasn't even something we even said. So we were like, okay, we kind of grazed by it, me and my partner at the time. We were asking more questions. Then she just came back to the abortion conversation. And it was like that was just something that kept circling to her. And it was something to us wasn't an option. But when after we left, we were just like, we felt unheard. We felt like none of our questions were answered. We felt like instead of us having our questions answered, we felt like another option was given to us, which was abortion because she kept mentioning it. Even though that, and we were like, after we were there, we were like, why does she keep mentioning that? And we were like, is that an option? And we were like, then we weighed the pros and cons and we still asked questions. We were like, maybe this is where we should go. Maybe this is the safest answer where we don't have to worry about financially struggling. We don't have to worry about your grandparents or anybody finding out really, and everything would be fine. So we came to that conclusion. Then we made another plan. She would come to one of my games in Clemson, South Carolina. And when she came the day before, she would get there a few days earlier. She would go somewhere to a local pregnancy resource center clinic, and she would get some questions answered. They would tell her how it would go, what are the symptoms be after she takes the pill, just to get some information. And then she would take the pill. So she goes Friday. She's keeping me updated the process. She's like, I'm leaving, I'm getting there, I'm going to the bag, I'm going to the office. Just keep me updated because she knows I'm nervous. It's a down the road maybe from her, but I can't be there because I'm with the team. So I'm just trying to be involved as I can, make sure she knows that everything's all right and but be there. So she goes to the appointment. They tell her you're gonna have a little bit of bleeding, you're gonna have a little bit of cramping. So I was like, okay. I was like, why did this lady make it seem like such a big deal if this night if something that's not that bad, it's a little bit of bleeding and cramping? And when I think about it back to this time, I wonder if my partner at the time told me that just so I didn't worry because she knew how worried and stressed and anxious I was, or is that what the clinic told her because they just didn't want to scare her away from an option, a choice, or something like that. So that's something I still ask myself, and that's something that goes to my mind because I'll never know the answer just because I don't talk to that my partner at the time anymore at that time, and I'll just something I just think about. So
Niles, before we continue, because you've laid out such important
Yes.
information, important things. You've said many important things, and I kind of want to go back to them before we proceed a little further. Because one of you were talking about fear. About how do I tell my grandparents or my providers? They've raised me. What about my education? What about my career? So all of a sudden, these fearful things come into our minds, which tend to make us more prone to choosing abortion. And it's
mhm,
always the wrong thing to do is have an abortion out of fear because those situations can work themselves out. And so I kind of wanted to highlight that a little bit because that's why most people have abortions is based out of fear of what ifs and what about this and what about that. And then you talked about, your, desire to look at your options, which were either adoption or some financial support or whatever, to help you have this baby, but yet none of these options were given to you when you went to that clinic.
no.
And this is not uncommon, Niles. I've been in this for 26 years and have my personal experience plus that of not millions, but hundreds of others is when you go to a clinic per se, the only option you're going to get is abortion because that's a product they sell.
Mhm.
And they're not there to help you work through a crisis situation. They're not there to answer your questions and help you find a choice that's best for you and your girlfriend. And I kind of want to highlight that because I think our viewers and our listeners need to understand that. And then you
I want
talk
to pause for just a minute because I think if I understood Niles correctly, I think what he said is they went to a clinic, but it was a pregnancy resource center
Yes.
at
but it was
first.
a pregnancy resource clinic.
It
So
was a pregnancy,
So
but
it was
they really did.
deceptive.
Well,
yes,
well,
it was a to me, looking back, it was a pregnancy resource center, but they labeled it as a clinic because they were trying to make it easier for students around there to find them on Google searches. Because as a student or someone younger that's not very as educated as someone of my age now or us that are known about this field, you're not going to type in pregnancy resource center. You're not going to type in looking for PRC. You're going to type in closest clinic. And I've had plenty of teammates and people I know. They're like, I don't feel well. I'm going to go to the clinic. But I was like, why don't you just say like the on campus care? They're like, well, it's called Redford Clinic. I just call it that. That's what I look up. So I realize now thinking about it, it's a common key word to use for college students or like pregnancy resource centers that may use college campuses because they're trying to also pick up anybody that may just have a chance of seeing them. And I felt like that's what she was of saying maybe these are students that may be thinking about abortion. Maybe I can change their mind. And luckily they saw the clinic and came here, but this is a pregnancy resource center. So I felt like that may have been the approach that was going for. She may have thought we were coming in for an abortion, but she had prepared herself and had this in her mind that this, and just to mention, it was a faith-based resource clinic, because that's something we were thinking as well, because both of us are raised in faith. So we just also felt like they may have more resources available for us to be able to financially or anything. So that was another thing that played into it. But the clinic label was really for, I feel like, for searches and clicks to get people to come in for appointments, and hopefully they can change these young adults' minds.
Go ahead, Mary.
Molly, I was just thinking that if we have any listeners that work at pregnancy resource centers, maybe where this part of Niles' experience would say, be careful how you talk to the people that come in. Don't just assume, because it sounds like even the assumption then kind of planted the seed for you and your partner at the time. And
Yeah.
then, Molly, I think what you were saying was absolutely applicable to the clinic. I'll call it that way.
Right. Well, and I guess my whole point was that when you go into the type of clinic that Niles and his girlfriend ended up at, their sales strategy is, or their mindset is, anybody who walks in our door wants an abortion. And that's just an excuse for them to push abortion, and we can go into that at another time. But the point is, they weren't hearing you. I put that down. They had a very welcoming and compassionate, but they weren't listening to you and your girlfriend and the questions that you asked, and not providing you the information you were seeking. They were just pushing the abortion. And so I kind of wanted to highlight that a little bit. And then what did I write here? Can't see it. And then they planted a seed, and that's kind of something common I have with you, Niles, and your girlfriend, is I would have never thought about abortion if that seed had not have been planted. And it was a medical doctor. He told me about abortion, like, get your life back together, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, like you testified just a minute ago, you start thinking, well, I don't have to tell my parents. I don't have to be ashamed. I can continue on, so you start rationalizing these thoughts because it was presented to you as an option and it's legal to do so. And you're thinking you're talking to a professional and medical expert, in these discussions. So you kind of believe that. So I guess kind of wanted to highlight those things. So now, and let me just encourage you or just reaffirm that when they told your girlfriend that she would experience light bleeding and maybe light cramping, that was a lie, and it's told to every woman,
Yeah.
or it's safer than taking an aspirin, and or don't tell anyone if you end up at the emergency room, right, Mary? What is it they say?
They say to just tell them you're having a miscarriage.
Right. So it's like you mentioned, it's to keep her from being afraid to take the drugs.
Mhm.
Because if they told you the truth about the side effects of those drugs and what you're gonna go through in the field development, women wouldn't do it. So anyway, I just wanted to plant that in your discussion and then want you to continue on. So here she is. Go ahead, Mary.
While we're paused, I just want to say something. Niles, I love the way you wanted to be supportive of her and you wanted to be there with her. So many times, and certainly in my circumstance, we didn't really communicate a whole lot. And so I just want my hats off to you for communicating and communicating and communicating with her. I know there's more to your story, but
Mhm.
I do want to just say thank you for being available to her and thank you for being intentional about communicating with her.
And for being a man, for being a man. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, and to go back, which thank you both for what you were saying and highlighting those points. And to go back to what you were saying about it was a lie. Well, I actually learned that the next day, because when she actually came to my game, because we thought everything was fine. She had a ticket, and we didn't plan for her to come because we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know how it was going to affect her. So she came, and my son was there, my parents were there, and that was just them, those four. And my mom and dad actually knew, because I told my mom just because I wanted her to be in tune, because if something happened, I didn't want them to both, either of them to be on the spot in shock, no idea what's going on, can't answer any questions. And she felt she was comfortable with them knowing, because she knew that she was going to be at the game with them as well as my son was going to be there. So it was like they just kind of wanted to, we just did that as a make sure everyone was in on the loop. So after the game, everything was going well. She told me up until the game, everything was fine. Through the game, she felt a little bit of cramping, was okay. And we were in the tunnel after the games, and around this time, this is where we have like we're meeting with our families, but outside of the gate, there's people there storming us, wanting autographs and wanting to take pictures. And you just know how some football fans can be. Well, I meet up with her and my family, and while we're just talking, just catching up before we go out there to the crazies, which we call them sometime, just because it can be just a frenzy, she starts like cramping really bad and bends over. And I was just like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And she's like, "It got really bad out of nowhere." Then just kind of just as we keep sitting there trying to make sure she's okay, it gets bad. She's bleeding. And it's bleeding to the point where it's South Carolina in the fall, but it's earlier because it's like August, September, so it's a little warmer. So she's wearing shorts, and she started bleeding through her shorts very bad, profusely, to the point where I had to use my warm-up jacket to cover her up. And then she was in so much pain that I had to help her to the vehicle, because she really couldn't walk because there was so much pain. So really, I was helping her, but it was pretty much me carrying her majority. And mind you, I told you there's fans out here. So I have her, my parents, and my son. We're trying to stick together as we're trying to push through a crowd of fans who are asking me, "Hey, can I take a picture with you? Hey, can I ask for your autograph? Hey, this and that." And then you have other fans like, "Oh, he's after a whole game, he's carrying his girlfriend. He's such a good guy." And but they have no idea what's going on in my mind, the panic that's going on that's setting in. And what you're mentioning about being a man in that moment, I didn't feel like much of a man, because I was like, I'm carrying her to this vehicle, but it's my fault because we made this decision and now she's in pain. She's like bleeding, and I just didn't feel like that. So we get to the car, we end up driving home, and one of the parts of my story mention sometimes is that my son is still with us, and he has no idea what's going on. She's very upset. She's crying at this point because there's so much pain, and he pats her on her like thigh. He's like, "Are you okay?" And in that moment, I was just kind of like stuck in a shock of, he's like at this time maybe a 3 or 4. He's fairly young, so for him to kind of pick up on that social cue at a young age, and or just know he just kind of did that. I was like, I don't know how much that meant to her or anything, but it just kind of had me in shock. But we get to my house where I'm staying, and she goes to the bathroom. She passes the embryo, what we thought, and then she comes out, and we really don't, I ask her if she's okay. And I say, and we never really mention it, talk about it. We never ask, how do you feel? What do you feel now? Or anything after. We just kind of like move on as usual. So we end up just getting ready for bed and watching TV a little bit and going to sleep. Never really talked about it anymore. She ends up going back to grad school. She drives 8 hours back. A week goes by, we're talking like normal, and I mean, you can feel a little bit off, but we're trying to keep things very just as regular scheduled program, just nothing off, no one to bring up those bad thoughts or anything. And then Friday comes for another game, and she sends me a picture of the toilet, and it's an actual embryo. But this time, you actually see like this is what it is. It's like you see a little bit of the eye, and for us, it was for her, it was tough because in my mind, she went through the same pain and bleeding, but this time alone in her apartment, all the way 8 hours away from anybody, no family. She's only been in college for maybe a few months, so she doesn't really make very close friends with anybody, except not even her roommate. So it's very much so like she was on her own. And I see that, and I'm like, I'm stuck because I'm thinking everything was going to be fine. We'd have to really resurface these emotions or pain, and there it is. And even after we just still grazed by it, it was like, okay, now we're like, it has to be done now. Because we realized the week before she passed, just a blood clot, and this was actually embryo. We was like, this has to be it.
Mm,
And we just kind of moved along as regular scheduled, and we thought it was, but for us, it was very hard. It was like that elephant in the room, just tension that you can't explain, or there's just something with someone you just don't know what's going on. And it wasn't like we were mad at each other, but it felt like it came off that way because there was something there we weren't talking about. And then it
Mm.
started to leak in other areas of my life. I played football, so at football practice, I'm a little bit more over aggressive. I'll say that. Like, I'm going against my teammates, but I'm exerting a lot more anger, frustration. And everybody knows you like want to push your teammates, you trash talk. That's what we do as men. But I was taking a little bit too far at times. I realized that I was like walking into it angry. Nobody was making me angry like, and making me get there. I would just walk into the facility angry, frustrated, ready. And I realized that's not me. And everybody knew that wasn't me. And coaches were praising it because they're like, this is the attitude everyone needs to have. We need to be more aggressive. So in my mind, I'm just trying to. I know something's wrong, but I'm like, if my coaches love it, this is what I'm here to do anyway. I'm here to play football, and this is my last year, so I might as well use whatever I have going on in a way to help. So as time goes on, I'm just still angry. I'm isolating myself from my teammates. Me and my partner at the time, we still are having just like little bickering and arguments that lead to bigger things, and we finally just end up not staying together anymore. And we ended up breaking up, and from that point on, we never talked about it, and I never talked about it again. I tried to not even think about it, and I even got myself to forget about it for some time until I saw support after abortion and started working here actually.
So how did that door open for you? I do have I'm writing notes here and I do have questions, but how did that door open up for you to go into abortion support ministry?
Of course. So for me, as I played football for some time professionally, bounced around, and then once it got to the time where I was like, you know what, football is done. It's time to really sit down and find a career and find somewhere to go. Like football doesn't last forever, and I don't want to be one of those guys that just try to hang on to this dream until their late 30s and then try to get into a career. It's hard, especially in the job market. So I was just online looking maybe 3 a.m. in the morning. At this time, I wasn't sleeping very much. Just I felt like a lot of stress in my life. And I was staying up later and I was trying to figure things out. And I was just my mind was on a constant loop. And it was 3 a.m. and I found an ad on a job search website. And it said men's healing coordinator for support after abortion. So mind you, this is the first time I've even thought about abortion since my experience. I've been going on through life ignoring it. I would have triggers or something that would be uncomfortable, but I would just go on through life and nothing happened. So the first thing I did, went to the website and I just started to look around the resources that Support After Abortion had, looked at the webinars that were available at the time. I just looked around and I was like, even stuff for men. And that was another thing. I was like, so even men have resources for them. And knowing I was that man, I was like, this is something that I felt like was a calling to me. So I ended up applying and I was sitting there waiting and it was like this is one of the first times I've just gotten into the job market world. So I was just sitting for the longest waiting for an email back. I was waiting for a response. I think I waited for about a week or two and I was like maybe they found someone or I just didn't fit it. Maybe I don't have enough experience because I was like my degree is in criminal justice and sociology. I was like I don't fit this role, but I was like I really want to do this and started that process, ended up getting hired. And one of the first things I did when I started working wasn't a project, wasn't an article, wasn't a blog. It was my executive director. She said, I want you to go through healing. And I was like, what? I was like, I thought I was gonna have a project. I thought I was gonna be getting ready to go travel and talk to meet men. She said she wanted me to go through healing. She set up a time and calendar for me to go through unraveled roots and keys to open
Wow.
healing. And at first I was cautious, but once I started that, I ended up going through my healing journey and I'm still in my healing journey. It's not over. But it was one of those things for me that I was my first experience and I felt like something had been lifted within myself and I got more comfortable to talk about my story. I wanted to do more. I wanted to be there for more. I wanted to just figure out any way I can be there to support other men and women it reminds me of because that reminds me of my partner and myself when I was going through my abortion experience and what we would have needed or what would have helped us. And I'm not saying it would have helped us stay together in general, but just healing in general for both of us after the experience that both of us would have needed.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest place because for myself, I'm going through healing and I'm working through it, but I never know if she found healing. I don't know because we never had that relationship after. So I never know. But since being at support after abortion, I've done so many things. I've gone to conferences, as mentioned, going to CareNet, Heartbeat. I've done things like traveling to meet other pregnancy resource centers. I've done webinars. Something I've never thought I could do is host a webinar. Doing things like this, being on a podcast. Like I played football, so I've done interviews, and I still wasn't the biggest fan. But I think now I'm even better now doing podcast interviews now than I was ever when I played football. So that's one of the things just getting out of my comfort zone and being in this world and just doing this, being in the world of helping other men and women has been something I really appreciated.
That's awesome. Well, but real quick, and I know Mary probably has something she wants to ask too, but I kind of want to go back. I've taken a lot of notes here. So I can see how God orchestrated you going into abortion recovery. And because Mary can probably testify personally on herself, but for me, I had a similar experience, a little different, but I was introduced to a crisis pregnancy center, maybe volunteering there. And one of the first requests was, have you had an abortion? The first question. And I said, yes. First time I kind of said it out loud. Well, we'd like for you to go through abortion recovery. And I'm going, I don't need abortion recovery. I'm fine.
Yeah.
But the Holy Spirit had different plans, and I ended up going through it and learning. And you still, I mean, gosh, it was 1993 when I went through abortion recovery, long time ago. So I'm still healing from time to time of something deep rooted. And I love that program,
Raveled roots.
Unraveled Roots. I can't read my own writing, but I learned a lot and still through this journey how deep that abortion hurt me and wounded me and affected me. So my question is, what did you learn about yourself through this healing program and how it impacted you? Yeah.
For myself, it definitely helped me look within myself, but learn to look at myself in a different light. Because after my abortion experience, I was very hard. I've always been hard on myself. I've always given myself tough love. One of the things I say is, if anyone spoke to me the way I spoke to myself, I would be upset. I'd be angry. I'd want to fight.
Mm.
But if I feel that way, why would I speak to myself that way? So then after going through healing, it just rewired me to really change how I thought about myself and being like, it's okay to feel this. It's okay for this to hurt. It's okay to speak up about things. And it's okay for me to look at different relationships as something I don't need to have in my life. So it was something that just it made me more self-aware. I say the biggest part of my healing journey, I became self-aware, not things just around me, but internally. When things I looked at emotions differently. So if emotion was like sadness, I'll be like, what is making me, not why, because if I knew why I was sad, then I wouldn't be sad. So I say, what is making me sad? Who's making me sad? And where is this coming from? And then I can write it down or figure it out and then go from there. So as for me personally, it definitely changed how I looked at myself and how I really analyze emotions and how I like answer and solve those emotions.
Mary?
You know, Niles, I just want to commend you because you did have the courage to go ahead and go through the healing process. But not only that, it sounds to me like you embraced it, and it's really refreshing to hear a man that wasn't afraid, that went ahead and looked in and looked all the way, looked at the emotions, now can talk about it. So that is really an encouragement to me, and I think probably to Molly too, because there have been women that have been talking for a while, but the men are just now beginning to talk. Some of them have been talking for a while. So I just want to say thank you here again. But one of the questions I had, because it sounds to me like you were not aware before that, but if you were, just correct me. It sounds like you weren't even aware that abortion needed recovery before you got into the, yes. See, it's interesting to me. And so now I'm sure now that you're in the abortion recovery space, you recognize, there's lots of people offering abortion recovery.
Mhm.
Maybe not so many for men, but there are more for men now than there once was. And so certainly support after abortion was one of those places. Do you have a way people could contact you that support? If there's a listener out there, and it's a man or a woman, but they know a man that might want to get in touch with you, could they contact you or even a woman?
Yes. So if there's a way, if they want to reach out to me personally, you can reach out to me at Niles at supportafterabortion.com. But supportafterabortion.com, we actually have an after abortion line. So if there's any man or woman that has been impacted by abortion, you can reach out to our after abortion line through call, text, email, live chat, or even through our social medias. because we also allowed that space because we want anyone that to be able to reach us that's looking for support. And Mary, you laid out a great thought, and I wanted to go to it before I continue talking with, but where you were saying about not realizing it until I got into this space. I didn't even know that there was a space for abortion healing in general, not even for women, because it was just something that I thought that people did. You had it happened to you, and you figured it out on your own after. Because one of the things for us after she took the abortion pill or they let her out her appointment, they never mentioned anything about this is for you at your partner to go to classes after you're done. It was pretty much okay. Here's your pill. This is the paperwork and like saying that you signed this, so we're not responsible, and this is what to follow, and that's it. Now that I'm thinking about it, I was like, and now being in this space, I'm like, I see it so much, see it often, but I also think I'm looking for it more because I'm trying to figure out different ways to reach others that may be impacted because I haven't realized not just support, but how many more people are impacted themselves. It's crazy the amount of conversations I've had with certain random people or strangers that have mentioned that they have been impacted or part of an abortion. But before, I never would have thought to ask that question or been comfortable enough. But now I feel like I can step into that space and be there for them and actually offer resources and have the tools to be there for them, man or woman.
That's awesome, Niles. And it is quite alarming to realize how many people have been hurt by abortion, that we're surrounded by them everywhere we go. And like you and your former girlfriend, you're walking in silence. You're dealing with it in silence and in isolation. And like, you mentioned so many things about it's the elephant in the room. You're not going to talk about it. You kind of try to forget about it. You're going to try to go on with your life. And so you try to bury it real deep, but the symptoms of your trauma, the symptoms of your pain and your regret are going to come out, manifest, like you said, on the football field. You were overly aggressive and went in angry. I mean, I can identify with anger very easily. So that's just some common symptoms. And I've mentioned this many times before that where our society seems to be so angry
Mhm.
and get triggered so easily. And I believe one of the reasons is because of unresolved, unhealed abortion trauma and regret and pain. And so, I tend to not react to angry outbursts when I'm speaking or talking and I get an angry outburst about, abortion's my choice, my right, because I can see and understand that they're still in denial, they're still wounded, and I don't take it personally, because I was that angry person at one time. But it's so refreshing and so encouraging to know that there's men like you out there who want to comfort those with the same comfort you yourselves received through abortion healing. And it's so important. I really, and I've said this many times, Mary, if the church would talk about it, if pastors would talk about it, offer hurting people and their congregations an opportunity to repent and to be, of course, they're going to be forgiven, but to go through healing and restoration and recovery. I truly believe a revival will break out across this country like we've never seen before. And that's why it's important to share your story. And Niles, we are running out of time. And I'm trying to keep my dog from barking down here because my outside dog is barking. But before I do, I'm going to let Mary jump in there.
Thank you. Thank you, Molly. I just want to be sure our listeners know how to get a hold of Niles. He spells his name Nyles at Support After Abortion, so you can catch him there. And Niles, I don't know if you know the phone number for the after abortion line that you all have.
Oh, yes, I can pull it up for you right now, actually. So it's 833-403-4325.
All right.
And I
Got
can
it
give it to
written
you one
down.
time or if you want to give it to me.
Well, we're gonna run it across the screen when we get this ready so people who are watching can see the number as well. And yeah, we'll give it one more time, but I'll ask you what to do. Or I'll ask you a question, and then you can add that. So there's a man out there, Niles, who's just come across this podcast, and he's like you. Boy, I had an abortion a long time ago, but I've never thought about it since then. But the things that Niles has said is kind of triggering some emotions in me that I can't quite figure out. What would you say to that man?
First thing I say to that man is don't, I won't say don't because I can feel like I'm being very telling you what to do, but I'll say it in an I statement. I myself felt that way. I felt like there was nothing out there for me, and I realized when I started to realize that something was going on, and it was my abortion experience. First looked at myself and was like, "What's going on within myself?" And I say to myself, to say to you, I looked at myself with hard judgment. So what I could say to that man is, be light with yourself, be gentle, be compassionate. It's okay if you feel anger. It's okay if you feel sadness. It's okay if you feel grief. It's okay if you feel anything you can't put a name to. But it's not okay to let yourself not be okay. So that's one thing I like to say, and I let say a thing that most men, when you hear this, that's my challenge to you, because when I feel like when if I challenge you, and I don't want to say I'm challenging you as a man, but I'm giving you a challenge to do, just to be able to reach out to other men, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, be with compassion with yourself, and then just be okay with asking for help. It's okay to ask for help.
That's good. It's okay. It's not okay to be not okay. Is that what you
Yes.
said?
It's okay. It's okay. It's not okay to let yourself not be okay.
Yeah, that's very good because
Let
we know
yourself.
how sweet it is on the other side of abortion hurt and abortion woundedness. And we want everyone to be on our side. I was on the other side for, 15 years, I guess. But boy, I wouldn't go back there again because it wasn't okay. I wasn't okay, but I am okay now and I can move forward with my life. Well, thank you, Niles, for that great encouragement to the men that are listening out there. And we hope and pray that if this podcast, this testimony from Niles has impacted you in any way, that you would contact the after abortion line, which is 833-403-4325, or you can go to their Niles at supportafterabortion.com. Is that right? .com? And contact him, or you can reach out to us, or you can comment. But be sure and share this podcast with all of your connections because this information needs to get out there. And Mary and I thank you for tuning in to More to the Story with Molly White. And we thank you, Niles, for coming in and sharing your story and your heart and your passion with us. And we look forward to seeing you again next time. God bless you. Bye bye.